Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lin. Namaskar. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. The Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba to stay on as the leader after winning a runoff in the House. US President-elect Donald Trump speaks to Russian President Vladimir Putin, advises him to de-escalate tensions. The Kremlin denies reports of a phone call between Trump and Putin. Climate Summit, COP29 opens in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku. Japanese lawmakers have re-elected Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba as the leader of his party and of the coalition, despite his coalition's recent loss of a parliamentary majority in the lower house. In Monday's vote, the Prime Minister Ishiba received 221 votes in the 465-member House to beat the top opposition leader, Yoshihiko, in the first runoff, in fact, in 30 years. Though his Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner, the Koimito, have won the largest block of seats, they have fallen short of the majority held since 2012. Now Ishiba will need support from smaller opposition parties to advance his policy agenda. The US President-elect Donald Trump announced late Sunday that he is bringing back hardline immigration official Tom Homan to oversee the country's borders in the incoming administration. In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump said the former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Tom Homan, will be in charge of the country's borders in his new administration. He added that in addition to overseeing the southern and the northern borders and maritime as well as aviation security, Homan will be in charge of all deportation of illegal migrants back to their country of origin. Homan, who served in Trump's administration for a year and a half during his first term, is also a contender for the Secretary of Homeland Security. Trump has pledged to launch on day one of his presidency the largest deportation operation of undocumented immigrants in the United States' history. The former Republican presidential candidate and biotech executive Vivek Ramaswamy announced on Sunday that President-elect Donald Trump plans to make mass deportations a top priority when he returns to the White House. Trump, who campaigned on strict immigration stance, has vowed to initiate a sweeping crackdown, aiming at setting a record of deportation numbers. Now, his running mate, J.D. Vance, estimated the operation could see up to 1 million people deported annually.
Not a cent of government spending should go to subsidize this, not to sanctuary cities, not to federal aid to people who are in this country illegally. And we're going to see a large number, by the millions, of self-deportations as well. And so these are pragmatic places to start that would give us, yes, the largest mass deportation in American history.
Donald Trump will become the first president of the United States to take office while several criminal cases against him are pending in various courts of the country. So does his ascent to the highest office in the United States relieve him of his legal troubles, or will the dozens of criminal and civil charges against him continue? Amritpal Singh explores.
One question that's hotly being debated here, both in political circles and the media, is what happens to the legal cases against Donald Trump. Now that he's won the election, will it mean that criminal cases against him would disappear? Trump has been battling 4 simultaneous prosecutions, 2 related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election result in Georgia, 1 on his mishandling of secret documents, and 1 on his hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. If media reports are to be believed, federal officials are already exploring options on how to wind down the federal cases under the assumption that sitting US presidents cannot be prosecuted or jailed while in office. This assumption flows from a long-standing US Department of Justice policy, which has been reaffirmed by US Supreme Court rulings that maintain that sitting presidents cannot be tried or jailed while in office. Legal experts, however, say much would still depend on the judge.
Generally, there is no immunity for civil cases where the acts, especially when the acts are outside of the official duties of the president. Here in the civil case against Donald Trump, those definitely are acts that are related to his personal business affairs. So I don't see any immunity being given in those circumstances. Now, the federal and state criminal cases, that's more of a gray area and will be left to the interpretation or ruling of the individual courts that are hearing those cases.
Who Trump appoints as his Attorney General is being keenly watched here in the US because his AG could be instrumental in stalling the cases, if not dropping them altogether. While the Trump-appointed Attorney General could drop the federal cases against him, but the cases in New York and Georgia will have to wait until the end of his term. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina, this is Amrit Pal Singh for DD India in Florida.
Meanwhile, the outgoing US President, who's Joe Biden, has invited Donald Trump to come to the Oval Office on Wednesday. According to the US National Security Advisor, Biden's top message will be his commitment to ensure peaceful transfer of power, and he will also talk to Trump about what's happening in Europe, in Asia, and West Asia. In all, Biden will go through the top priorities for U.S. domestic and foreign policy. The outgoing Democratic administration of President Joe Biden has confirmed that it will send as much aid as possible to Ukraine before Trump's inauguration on January 20. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump spoke with the Russian President Vladimir Putin and discussed the ending of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, advising him to de-escalate tensions. Sources say that Trump held this call from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida on Thursday, just days after his stunning election victory over the Democratic rival Kamala Harris. During the call, Trump highlighted the significance of the substantial U.S. military presence in Europe. Trump had claimed that he could end the Russia-Ukraine conflict within a day of assuming office during the election campaign. However, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, has denied reports of the phone call between Putin and Trump, adding that Putin has no specific plans to speak to Trump at the present. Russia launched an overnight missile strike in southern Ukraine, killing at least 6 people and injuring 21 others, including 5 children. Several buildings caught fire in the region. Emergency blackouts were introduced as a preemptive and a preventive measure in Kiev. Now, following which, the Ukrainian Air Force has put the whole country under air raid alerts. The Ukrainian Air Force has claimed to have shot down 2 missiles and 39 out of 74 drones launched by Russia overnight. The strike comes a day after Moscow and Kiev launched a record overnight strike in terms of drones on one another. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has said that there has been certain progress on the ceasefire in Lebanon. The statement came after the Israeli army launched an operation in the country targeting Hezbollah.
I think there is certain progress working on the issue. We are working with the Americans on the issue. There is progress.
Meanwhile, the state leaders arrived in Riyadh on Monday for a joint Arab-Islamic summit that aims to focus on Israel-Hamas conflict. Leaders from Mauritius, Palestine, Senegal, Libya and Yemen are taking part in the event. Trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed into Gaza on Monday. The United States, they have been navigating this situation as they want to ensure that the Israelis are not following a policy of starvation. Now, trucks with humanitarian as well as other aid were seen passing through the Erez crossing into northern Gaza. The U.S. deadline is set to expire just days after global food security experts predict a strong likelihood that famine is imminent in areas of northern Gaza. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was welcomed by the French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace in Paris on Monday as he took part in the Armistice Day commemoration ceremony. Starmer is the first British leader to attend the French Armistice Day services since World War II. Both leaders will discuss ways to help Ukraine after the United States' President-elect Donald Trump's growing concerns of reducing U.S. support for Ukraine. In Bangladesh, workers of 5 garment factories, and this is in Ghazipur, they have blocked the Dhaka-Mymensingh highway for the 3rd consecutive day, demanding payment of outstanding wages and allowances, as well as the reopening of closed factories. The workers who took to the highway on Saturday continued their demonstration on Monday morning, leading to severe traffic congestion and creating immense hardships for commuters. Due to the protest, at least 20 garment factories in the surrounding area declared a holiday to avert any trouble. Workers were urged to leave the highway with the hope of resolving the matter by the end of the day. This is according to the UNB. Leela Bhalab Adhikari, who resigned last week as the Minister of Internal Affairs and Law of Nepal's Koshi province following allegations of human trafficking, was arrested on Sunday in Biratnagar. He was subsequently brought to the country's capital, Kathmandu, for further investigation. There is an alleged involvement in a human trafficking ring that arranged fake identification documents for 3 youth attempting to enter Japan. In Nepal, the Kaski District Court on Sunday remanded Rashtriya Swatantra Party chairperson and former Home Minister Rabi Lamichhane into custody for 3 more days for further investigation into charges of cooperative fund embezzlement and organized crime. This is also news from Nepal. Now let's take a look at other stories from around the world. Pakistan's Punjab province has banned most outdoor activities and ordered early closure of shops to tackle severe air pollution. Schools and public spaces shall remain closed till the 17th of November, with a rise in respiratory and eye issues reported. Having entered service in 1988, the French nuclear submarine L'Homme Horde will depart Brest this week for Cherbourg-Teta, where she is set to be decommissioned. Once lost to Cape Town's lowland wetlands, since the mid-1900s, the Cape water lily has been reintroduced to its native habitat, marking a milestone during the culmination of the Earth Shot Week in the city. Well, still to come here on DD India Live. All eyes on Baku as the COP29 begins. India-Sri Lanka ferry services are halted because of bad weather. And a handwritten copy of the Indian Constitution is on display at the Sharjah International Book Fair. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Mark Lynn. The Climate Summit COP29 opens in Azerbaijan's capital Baku on Monday. As the 12-day summit kicks off, leaders highlighted the need for a new climate finance goal and a leadership and action to save the planet. The focus would be on transitioning away from fossil fuels and to keep the world on track to 1.5 degrees of warming. COP29 overlaps the G20 Summit in Brazil, where the climate issues are going to be discussed as well. As a key player in the Global South, India at COP29 will play a significant role in shaping the discussions on climate finance. India's stance asserts that developed nations should take greater responsibility in mobilizing financial resources to support developing countries.
COP29 is a moment of truth for the Paris Agreement. It will test our commitment to the multilateral climate system. We must now demonstrate that we are prepared to meet the goals we have set ourselves.
We must agree a new global climate finance goal. If at least 2/3 of the world's nations cannot afford to cut emissions quickly, then every nation pays a brutal price. If nations can't build resilience into supply chains, the entire global economy will be brought to its knees. No country is immune.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be focusing on multiple issues ranging from enhancing global growth to sustainable development at the 2024 G20 Summit, which is taking place in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro on the 18th and 19th of November. Speaking exclusively to DD India's Gautam Roy, India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant says that India will also play a constructive role in building a consensus among all member nations on contentious matters like the Ukraine and West Asian conflicts. Let's listen.
The 2024 G20 Summit is set to be held in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro on the 18th and 19th of this month, and India is a founding member of a grouping of the world's most impressively financially powerful countries. And leading India will, of course, be Prime Minister Modi, and along with him will be G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant. He's with us right now. Thank you for speaking to DD India. Could you tell us, in terms of the kind of things that Brazil is taking forward, it's got its agenda set on eliminating hunger and poverty, sustainable development, and reform of global institutions. Is that what Prime Minister Modi will also have on his plate, or will there be something more that he would like the G20 to move forward on?
Oh, the Prime Minister will focus on a range of issues concerning the Global South, and the challenges relate to driving growth, balanced, sustainable, inclusive growth. And the challenge is that the global growth is slowest at the turn of the century. The developed countries are growing at 1.8%, the global growth is about 3.3%, but emerging markets are growing at 4.4%, and 2/3 of the growth in the coming 3-4 decades will come from emerging markets. So growth is important to achieve the SDG goals. And SDG goals are important because we need to have an impact on the citizens of the world.
And when the G20 meeting was held in September in India, when India was the host, one of the biggest challenges was the conflict in Ukraine. Now, a year down the line, slightly more, the conflict in West Asia has been added to it. So these are tremendous challenges. How will the G20 tackle it? The last time consensus was built for the Delhi Declaration on the first day itself. Is it going to be more challenging, less challenging this time?
I think this will be a complex issue. There will be many more challenges. We struggled with it. We did about 300 hours of negotiation on one para of Russia-Ukraine. We failed 16 times but arrived at a consensus on the Russia-Ukraine war, where even the United Nations has not been able to arrive at a consensus so far. So there will be challenges because post our summit, we've had the Israel, Middle East, Gaza crisis, and that's a huge humanitarian crisis. And some of the countries have a very strong view on this, so they'll all express it. How it will play out in the coming days will have to be seen. But India will always play a positive and constructive role.
You mentioned the Global South, and one of the significant things that happened when India was hosting G20 was the inclusion of the African Union, 55 countries, as a full-fledged member. How do you think this time around that will make a difference to the kind of deliberations and decisions that might take place in the summit this time around?
India has been very instrumental. Prime Minister Modi has been very instrumental in making G20 an inclusive society. And the voice of the African Union will have to be heard very strongly at the Brazil summit also. And therefore, I think India has played a key and a critical role, and African Union will play a very major role in Brazil.
The European Union leaders met just a few days ago, and they were sort of recalibrating because you have a big change that's taking place in the United States. A Trump presidency will begin in January. Will that sort of recalibration be there for the G20 as well, because of the kind of agenda Donald Trump has, the MAGA agenda, his views on the environment very different from some of the other leaders in the G20?
The challenge will be that America continues to play a very key and a critical role because it's a society which accounts for about 26% of the global GDP. It accounts for about 44% of the market capitalization. With just 4% of the population. And therefore, US voice will be heard, but also the voice of other European leaders is important, and so will be the voice of Russia and China.
Thank you, Mr. Kant, for joining us and talking about what lies ahead for the G20. And clearly, it is to build consensus on critical global issues. With camera person Vinay Tiwari, Gautam Roy, DD India.
The veteran market analyst and American investor Jim Rogers has hinted at his intention to reinvest in India, noting an optimistic shift in the country's economic attitude. He acknowledged exiting the Indian market too soon in the past, but now sees strong potential for future growth. As quoted by the Financial Chronicle, Rogers said, "After so many years, India has realized that prosperity is not bad, success is not bad. There is a positive change in New Delhi. I sold my investments in India too soon. I will invest more in India as the country has a brighter future." A delegation from International Monetary Fund will visit Sri Lanka next week for a third review of the island nation's financing program. The team, led by the IMF Senior Mission Chief Peter Bure, will assess Sri Lanka's economic policies, progress on ongoing reforms, and the implementation of previous agreements with the IMF. Upon successful completion of the review, the IMF is expected to release the next installment of the loan to the country. Now, IMF has approved a $2.9 billion extended fund facility available to Sri Lanka over a 48-month period in tranches to help its economy to recover from economic crisis. The services on the India-Sri Lanka ferry between Nagapatnam and Santurai, they have been halted because of bad weather. The director of the Ind-Sri ferry service, Niranjan Nandagopal, has in fact said that the poor chances of operating the ferry this month because the monsoon weather has been pretty bad. The ferry service had been suspended. He added that regular ferry services will resume in January with the easing of the seas. Now, prior to the suspension, the popular service has been operating to full capacity. The ferry services had been inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi last year, and there had been several demands to start it. The National Book Trust of India is showcasing a prestigious replica of the original handwritten Indian Constitution, the manuscript, at the 43rd Sharjah International Book Fair, running from the 6th of November to the 17th of November. This certified A3-sized copy, known for its clarity and quality, is part of India's extensive literary display at the event, where over 2,500 publishers from 112 countries are represented. In addition to this, the rare exhibit, the Trust is presenting notable series like PM Yuva and India at 75, celebrating India's freedom movement and knowledge systems. Now, India's presence at this fair is strong, with 52 publishers joined by global literary figures and workshops promoting creative writing. It's organized by the Sharjah Book Authority under the theme, "It Starts with a Book." Now, SIBF 2024 continues to shine as a hub for global literary exchange, concluding on November 17. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.